Hello, my name is Gary, and I was raised in the Western United States, so I'm a native English speaker. I hope that you will enjoy this YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us.
The Tale of Timmy Tiptoes by Beatrix Potter, 1866 to 1943. Once there was a chubby, cozy little gray squirrel named Timmy Tiptoes. He lived in a nest made of leaves at the top of a tall tree, and he had a wife, another squirrel, named Goody. Timmy Tiptoes sat outside enjoying the breeze, flicking his tail with a chuckle. "Goody, the nuts are ripe. We need to start storing them for the winter and spring." Goody Tiptoes was busy stuffing moss under the roof. "The nest is so cozy, we'll sleep soundly through the winter. And then we'll wake up thinner with nothing to eat in the spring," replied the cautious Timothy. When Timmy and Goody Tiptoes arrived at the nut thicket, they saw that other squirrels were already there. Timmy took off his jacket and hung it on a branch, and they quietly went about their work. Each day they made several trips and gathered large amounts of nuts. They carried them in bags and stored them in hollow tree stumps near the tree where they had built their nest. When the stumps were full, they started emptying the bags into a hole high up in a tree that used to belong to a woodpecker. The nuts rattled all the way down inside. "How will you ever get them out again? It's like a piggy bank," said Goody. "I'll be much thinner by spring, my dear," said Timmy Tiptoes, peeking into the hole. They gathered plenty because they didn't lose them. Squirrels that bury their nuts in the ground lose more than half because they can't remember where they put them. The most forgetful in the forest was named Silvertail. He started digging but couldn't remember where his nuts were. Then he dug again and found some nuts that didn't belong to him, which led to a fight. Soon other squirrels began digging too, and the whole forest was in chaos. Unfortunately, at that moment, a flock of small birds flew by, hopping from bush to bush, searching for green caterpillars and spiders. There were several types of birds, each singing its own unique song. One chirped, "Who's been digging up my nuts? Who's been digging up my nuts?" Another sang, "A little bit of bread and no cheese, a little bit of bread and no cheese." The squirrels followed and listened. The first small bird flew into the bush where Timmy and Goody Tiptoes were quietly tying up their bags, singing, "Who's been digging up my nuts? Who's been digging up my nuts?" Timmy Tiptoes continued his work without responding. After all, the bird wasn't expecting an answer. It was simply singing its usual song, which didn't mean anything at all. But when the other squirrels heard the song, they rushed at Timmy Tiptoes, cuffing and scratching him, knocking over his bag of nuts. The innocent little bird, which had caused all the trouble, flew away in panic. Timmy tumbled over and over, then turned tail and fled towards his nest, chased by a crowd of squirrels shouting, "Who's been digging up my nuts?" They grabbed him and dragged him up the same tree where the small round hole was. They tried to shove him in, but the hole was way too small for Timmy Tiptoes. They squeezed him so hard it was a miracle his ribs didn't break. "We'll leave him here until he confesses," said Silvertail Squirrel, and then he yelled into the hole, "Who's been digging up my nuts?" Timmy Tiptoes didn't respond. He had fallen inside the tree and landed on a pile of his own nuts. He lay there, stunned and motionless. Goody Tiptoes gathered the nut bags and went home. She made a cup of tea for Timmy, but he never showed up. Goody Tiptoes spent a lonely and miserable night. The next morning, she cautiously went back to the nut bushes to search for him, but the other unfriendly squirrels chased her off. She wandered all through the woods, calling, "Timmy Tiptoes, Timmy Tiptoes, oh, where are you, Timmy Tiptoes?" In the meantime, Timmy Tiptoes regained consciousness. He found himself curled up in a little moss bed, surrounded by darkness and feeling sore. It seemed he was underground. Timmy coughed and groaned because his ribs were hurting. Suddenly he heard a chirping sound, and a small, striped chipmunk appeared with a nightlight, asking if he felt better. It was very kind of the chipmunk. It lent Timmy its nightcap, and the place was stocked with supplies. The chipmunk explained that nuts had fallen from the top of the tree. Besides, I found a few buried, he said, laughing when he heard Timmy's story. When Timmy was stuck in bed, the chipmunk kept offering him food. But how will I ever fit through that hole if I don't lose some weight? My wife will be worried. Just one more nut, maybe two. Let me crack them for you, said the chipmunk. Timmy Tiptoes kept getting fatter and fatter. Goody Tiptoes went back to work on her own. She didn't store any more nuts in the woodpecker's hole because she had always wondered how she'd be able to get them out again. Instead, she hid the nuts under a tree root, and they tumbled down deep into the ground. One time, when she emptied a particularly large bag of nuts, she heard a clear squeak. The next time she came with another bag, a little striped chipmunk hurriedly scrambled out. It's completely crowded downstairs. The sitting room is packed, and now they're spilling into the hallway. And my husband, Chippy Hackey, has run off and left me. Can you explain all these nuts raining down? I'm so sorry. I didn't realize anyone was living here, said Mrs. Goody Tiptoes. But where is Chippy Hackey? My husband, Timmy Tiptoes, has run off too. I know where Chippy is, said Mrs. Chippy Hackey. A little bird told me. She led Mrs. Goody Tiptoes to the woodpecker's tree, and they listened at the hole. From below, they could hear the sounds of nuts being cracked and two squirrels singing, one with a deep voice and the other with a high voice. My little old man and I had a fight. How will we ever make things right? Make it right as best as you can. Then off you go, you little old man. You could squeeze in through that little round hole, said Goody Tiptoes. Yes, I could, replied the chipmunk, but my husband, Chippy Hackey, bites. From below, they heard the sounds of nuts cracking and nibbling. Then the two squirrel voices, one deep and one high, started to sing. For the diddle-day, diddle-dum-dee, diddle-diddle-dum-day. Goody Tiptoes peeked into the hole and called down, Timmy Tiptoes. Oh dear, Timmy Tiptoes. Timmy answered, Is that you, Goody Tiptoes? Of course it is. He came up and kissed Goody through the hole, but he was too fat to squeeze out. Chippy Hackey wasn't too fat, but he didn't want to come up. He stayed below, chuckling to himself. And so it went for 2 weeks, until a strong wind blew the top of the tree, opening the hole and letting the rain pour in. That's when Timmy Tiptoes finally came out and went home, carrying an umbrella. Chippy Hackey, however, stayed outside for another week, even though it was uncomfortable. Finally, a large bear came walking through the woods. Maybe he was looking for nuts, too. He was sniffing around as if searching for something. Chippy Hackey hurried home. When Chippy Hackey got home, he discovered that he had caught a cold, making him even more uncomfortable. Now, Timmy and Goody Tiptoes keep their nut store securely locked with a small padlock. Whenever that little bird sees the chipmunks, he sings, Who's been digging up my nuts? Who's been digging up my nuts? But nobody ever answers.